Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. I read 17 books in September, so this is the video where I go through all of them and tell you about them and what I rated them. So as usual, I will be starting with the books that I read in reading vlogs in September, just because I've already talked extensively about those books on my channel, so I don't want to be too repetitive with it. So first up, I had my Gothic horror reading vlog, which was a part of my Reading Different Subgenres series. So I read 4 books for that video, starting with the one on my physical TBR is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a classic, but if you haven't heard of what it's about, it's this romantic, psychological suspense thriller. We have this young woman as our main character. She does not have a name. We never get to know her name, but she ends up meeting this wealthy man named Max, and he marries her, takes her home to Manderley, which is his big estate, and then she kind of spirals and falls into this obsession with his ex-wife Rebecca, and from there it just keeps building and building and building until we eventually reach this breaking point and we get a reveal of sorts. I really like this. I think above all, the writing is what makes it stand out. It is very captivating and very descriptive within the writing, and I really enjoyed my time in this world and with these characters. This was a 5-star for me, and I'm really glad that I finally read it. Next, for that video, I read Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, which was another win for me. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This, we have a female main character. She is in her 20s. Both of her parents are gone for separate reasons, and she is left to take care of her teenage brother. They are living in a motel, and things are not really working in their favor when she gets the opportunity to work at Starling House, which is this very famous mansion in their town, and a famous author used to live there, and there's just a lot of history and deep secrets buried in this place. So when she starts working there and she meets the occupant, the new owner, a relationship starts to form between the two of them, and she starts to uncover a lot of these unexplained things that have happened at Starling House. Once again with this one, I loved the writing, I loved the atmosphere, I loved the characters, and I really enjoyed my time being in this world and being in this book, so that's why it was such a high rating for me. Then I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This one I gave 3.5 stars. Originally I gave it 4 stars, but as I was reflecting back after a couple of days after having read it, I realized that I really hadn't thought about it all that much since I read it, and I couldn't quite pinpoint why it is a distinctive 4-star. There were things that I enjoyed in this book. I think it was a well-told story. First of all, let me tell you what it's about. We have this woman who gets this very frantic letter from her cousin, and she's basically like, oh, I'm being poisoned, like, people are trying to kill me, you need to come and help me. And her husband won't let her go anywhere, like to a psychiatric hospital or anything. So she goes out there to assess the situation, and strange things start to happen in this house. And while she's there, she must work her way to uncovering what is actually real and what is not real. I think this had some really fantastic horror. It's really hard for me to talk about this one because the things that I really enjoyed were the things that were like kind of plot twists or plot reveals, like they would be spoilers if I talked about the specific details of this book that I enjoyed. But overall, 3.5 stars. It was an enjoyable read, and I'm glad that I read it. Then I read Where the Dead Wait by Allie Wilkes for this video. I think I gave this one 2 stars or 2.5 stars. I can't really remember. I did not enjoy this one. It was entirely too long. It was like 100 pages too long. We were in multiple different perspectives. It was very confusing. I don't want to talk about this one for too long. I think there were some really good graphic horror elements in there. It's basically this Arctic Gothic book that touches on like survival and cannibalism and a lot of different things, ghosts and hauntings. So there were some really, really good like imagery, horror imagery, and graphic scenes, but the story itself was very muddled and confusing and hard to follow. The other reading vlog that I did for September was a romance reading vlog. I read some romances that had a little bit of spooky vibes. I don't really entirely know what that means. It's just romances that were on my TBR that were not just traditional like rom-com romances, that maybe had a little bit deeper undertones, and I just wanted to read those before we go into October, into the horror season. So first for that one, I read Do Your Worst by Rosie Danan. This was, I think, my top book for that video. I gave this one 4 stars. In this, we are following a woman who is a curse breaker and a man who's an archaeologist. They are both working at this ancient castle in Scotland, and there is a lot of tension, career tension, professional tension, but there's also an attraction between the two of them, so now there's a bunch of sexual tension for the entire book. I really enjoyed this. I think that the characters were great. I think the romance plot was great. I think the non-romance plot with the curse on this castle was great. There was some spice in here that I actually didn't mind. I'm not always the biggest fan of spice, but I hate to say it, I kind of did enjoy the spicy scenes in this book. The next one for this video was Happy Medium by Sarah Adler. This is about a woman who, kind of similar to like the last book where our main character was a curse breaker, this one, she's a psychic medium. She is a fake psychic medium, but she gets tasked with having to break a curse at a goat farm where the owner is this very young, very handsome man, and there's a lot of tension there because he doesn't believe in her profession and he doesn't believe in this curse, and she has to convince him that it's real and try to figure out how to save his life, pretty much. I think this one was really, really cute. There were a few things that weren't my absolute favorite that I think could have been done better as far as like the plot line, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the relationship between the characters. I enjoyed the setting of being on this goat farm. I think it was really, really fun. So I give this one 3.5 stars. Then I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, which was a 3-star read for me. So this is about a woman whose father dies. All of her life, she's always been able to see ghosts. So she traveled home for the funeral when she meets a ghost that she was not expecting to see there, and it is a romantic interest of hers, and she has to navigate her feelings but also come to terms with the fact that this person is dead, and he's also confused as how he got there and why he's dead and what is going on. But there is a romance budding between them, and that makes things a little bit complicated when one of them is a ghost. I think this one was really cute and really fun, but I feel like the romance itself was a little bit underdeveloped. It felt like it was more of a physical attraction between these two than any sort of deeper emotional connection, and they had only really known each other for about a week, so I just wasn't feeling very strongly connected to them and their relationship. But I did enjoy our main character and everything that she was going through outside of the relationship, with grief, losing her father, the fact that she's always seen ghosts and kind of worked around dead things because her family owns a funeral home. I thought it was really, really fascinating. So there were things I liked, but the romance itself was a little bit of a letdown. So that one was 3 stars, as I said. And then the other book that I read for this reading vlog was My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. This was by far my worst read. I gave this 1.5 stars. I only bumped it up that little half star because I feel like it could have been worse. This is about a woman who goes on vacation and she finds a dead body inside of her like vacation rental, and then this big buff bounty hunter that gets hired to kind of investigate this murder, and then the two of them have a very like insta lust connection. This is very, very spicy, very steamy. I just did not enjoy our male main character at all. I kind of despised him, and because of that I wasn't rooting for the relationship. I didn't want them to be together. I didn't like the male love interest. So overall, as a romance, like, it just wasn't enjoyable. And then the writing on top of that, there were so many cringy things, cringy scenes and cringy lines of dialogue, and it just was not a pleasurable read for me. Okay, moving on now to everything I read outside of vlogs. I'm going to start from the lowest rated to the highest rated, like I normally do. So in my 3-star category, I have The UNM Mothers by Leslie J. Anderson, which is a newer release. This is a folk horror, and this is about a news reporter that hears of this story in this town where a horse has given birth to a healthy human baby, and she is sent there to kind of investigate, do a little write-up on the story, call it a day. She doesn't think it's going to be a very difficult job, but once she gets there, more strange things start happening, and she realizes there may be a deeper truth to this story. So we are following her as she investigates this town and kind of uncovers what is actually going on in this town and with the townspeople. I think this was interesting, but I think it maybe dragged on a little bit too long. I think it was very slow moving, which wasn't my favorite. Honestly, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Like, thinking back now in the future, having read this at the beginning of September, like, I don't really have a lot of thoughts or things that stood out to me. So we're just gonna move on to my 3.5-star books. I read The Day Tripper by James Goodhand. This is sort of like a romance, like a contemporary romance. Is that the correct word? I don't know. I don't really know what that means. Anyways, it's like a time travel book as well. So we have our main character who gets into a fight one night when he is, I think, like 20 years old, and then he wakes up the next day and he is 15 years in the future, and then every single day after that he wakes up at a different moment in his life. And so it is about him seeing what his life has become since the last moment that he remembers, and desperately trying, while following a non-linear timeline, to fix his past mistakes. And I think there are a lot of really interesting things that happened in here. Overall, it didn't really leave me with any strong feelings one way or the other. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I think it would be an enjoyable read that a lot of people could enjoy. I liked following our character. I liked seeing his story and his path develop in life, and him jumping around was really interesting. But other than that, I didn't have a whole lot of big takeaways. Then, from my physical TBR again, I read And by God's Hand, You Shall Die by David Sodergren. This is pretty much like a splatterpunk about this priest who wants to kill all the sinners. And that's really it. Once again, I feel like I don't really have any big takeaways from this one. I love David Sodergren, but I feel like the story and the characters in this book I didn't connect with as strongly as some of his other books that I've read. Some of the books by him that I've rated 5 stars or 4 stars. I think this one was just a little bit below that level because, of course, his writing was still there, which I really enjoyed. All the graphic murders and blood and gore and all of that I still enjoyed, but I just didn't really connect that strongly to the actual storyline. So that's why this is in the 3.5 star category, but I still love David Sodergren. Okay? And with that being said, can we talk about the fact that David Sodergren, out of nowhere, goes on Instagram one day and he says, "Hey, by the way, I'm Carl John Lee." Excuse me? I was shocked, okay? I was shocked. I've read a book by Carl John Lee, and I've seen his books everywhere. I've had his books on my TBR. I was like, are you serious? So when Mr. David Sodergren said that, I decided, well, now's my time to pick up this Carl John Lee book that I've had my eye on, and that book was Horror House of Perversion, which also got 3.5 stars from me. This is a novella. I'm not really sure how to explain it without giving too much away because it is so short. Basically, we have this group of people that did something despicable, something very horrific in the past, and now that thing is coming back for revenge, is coming back to haunt them, and it just goes off from there. Of course, once again, it's brutal. Like, this is Carl John Lee is David Sodergren, but this is a much more like extreme side of it. Like this, all of his stuff fits into the extreme horror category, where I feel like David Sodergren, some of his stuff isn't as crazy as some extreme horror. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's basically just more brutal than David Sodergren's books that he writes under his own name. This is definitely a book that is comparable to like I Spit on Your Grave or The Last House on the Left. Movies like that with a female character, something happens to them. I'm sure I don't have to say anything more than that. And then they come back for revenge on these people that did this thing to them. So there is a lot of violence against women that you have to read about. So if that is something you're sensitive to, I would not recommend picking this up. But overall, I think it was really fun, and you know, good for her. I love me a good little revenge story. So like I said, I gave this 3.5 stars. There is a sequel that I am hoping to read one of these days. Moving on now to my 4-star books off of my physical TBR again. We have The Stolen Hours by Alan Eskins. This is the 3rd book in a like interconnected mystery detective series. So the first book is called The Life We Bury, the second book is called The Shadows We Hide, and this is the 3rd one. Really, they only like correlate because we have the same main character. At least the first 2 follows the same main guy solving a mystery. This one he is in, but our main character is actually his girlfriend, so it is interconnected, but not entirely. Like, you don't have to read the other books in order to get this one. We are following this woman who is working to become a prosecutor, and she gets assigned to this case where this woman turns up after an attempted drowning, and then they pretty much know right from the beginning who did it, but they are trying to piece together enough evidence to convict this guy and also connect him to other murders that have happened in the past. So it's a really interesting story. Our main character as well has a lot of past traumas and different things that are affecting her personally as she works on this case, and once again, it's really just like them. They know who the guy is, but he knows that they know, and he is very meticulous and very detailed with all of his planning and everything that he's done in order to not get caught. So they have their work cut out for him trying to pin everything on this guy. So I really enjoyed it. I think this is a very solid crime mystery thriller, and I give it 4 stars. My next 4-star book was Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. This is kind of like a campy slasher. We basically have a summer camp for adults, but the whole objective is to unplug. So when they get there, they turn their cell phones in. Everybody is there for a reason, because they want to be away from technology. So they turn their cell phones in and they're there, and then people start turning up murdered. Our main character as well is an actress, and she was just canceled on the internet, is getting a lot of hate, and that is why she has chosen to attend this camp. So as more people turn up dead and more secrets are uncovered, things get tense and suspenseful, and it's really fun, it's bloody, and it's just like a good time. And I think it's a really, really good, especially to read during summer because it is this camp setting. I think it was just a really fun, quick-paced, bloody read, and I liked it. Next up is 4.5-star books. I read Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. This one, okay. I just need to take a moment to say I really enjoyed this book. I thought about giving it 5 stars, and then I read on Goodreads some 1-star reviews of this book, and they do make some good points. There are a few things that you could call out about this book, but because I enjoyed it while I was reading it and I enjoyed the story and the writing, I'm still sticking with 4.5 stars, even though those people do have some good points in their bad reviews. So this story follows Annie, who is a robot, and she was created for intimacy purposes for one specific man, but then the more that she learns and grows and sees in the world, she starts to form her own thoughts. She starts to have her own emotions and her own wants and desires in life. And so we're really following her story as she figures out what she wants in life aside from the purposes that she was created for. I think it was really, really fun and fascinating. I think this is a perfect read for fans of things like Ex Machina or the movie Her. And I think the way that this story was told was really fun. I liked the writing. I liked spending time with Annie and spending time in this world. I think there were definitely some things in the world that could have been built out a little bit better, but overall I had a positive reading experience. This is a book that anytime I had to put it down, I was just itching to pick it back up and read it, and I have thought about it a lot since reading it, and that is why I'm sticking with my high rating for this one. And last but not least, aside from Rebecca, I had 2 other 5-star books in September. The first one is Hum by Helen Phillips. This is a dystopian sci-fi book, and I feel like the synopsis of this one doesn't really prepare you for what's to come. It does, but it doesn't. But basically we have this world in the not so distant future where there are these things called hums, which are basically these robots. And it's basically a society that is set up to be very reliant on technology, on artificial intelligence. Advertising is everywhere, personalized advertising that you just can't escape. And there is the botanical gardens there. And that is this secluded area of greenery that is surrounded by this very, very overdeveloped and overpopulated city. It's very, very expensive to go. Sorry, there are children screaming outside. It is very expensive to stay at these botanical gardens, but our main character, she just got a big payout for doing an experimental medical procedure, and she decides to take her family for a special getaway, and they spend, I think it's 3 nights at the botanical gardens, and something happens when they are at the botanical gardens, and she must put her trust in AI, which is something that she is very, very against. She's very against technology, and I just think this was a really fascinating read. I think that Helen Phillips did a really good job of blending real world dystopian feeling incidents with this fictional, science fictional world and different concepts that are in there. And she also goes through and cites in the back of the book every single quote or every incident that is referenced within the book that is actually something that happened. And I just thought it was really fascinating. I'm somebody that is very anti-technology, not anti-technology, but anti-AI, and I try to not be super reliant on technology, and our society is definitely moving to a place where everything does rely on technology, and I'm not a fan of that. So I feel like this book just spoke directly to me and some of the things that our main character was thinking and feeling I really related to. So that is why I enjoyed this one. I don't think it would be a perfect read for everybody, but it really worked for me, and I'm really glad that it did. And I feel like that same sentiment can be true with my next 5-star, which was I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I love this book so much. I'm still thinking about this book. We are following our main character over one summer. I think it's in 1979. Correct me if I'm wrong. And basically something happens to him, and that makes him become a slasher. And so we're following him through this time in his life where he is just brutally killing people. But there are a lot of other things going on outside of that. There's some supernatural elements, and it really is just kind of a unique look at the slasher genre and analyzing certain parts of it and big stereotypes within slasher movies. And I just thought it was really, really fun. I think if you like slashers, you'll enjoy this book, and if you like Stephen Graham Jones, I can't see you not enjoying this. It's definitely one that stuck with me. I think the ending was perfect and is something that I still think about to this day. And I just had a really, really fun time reading this book. It was bloody, it was funny, It was emotional, and it was just a great time, and it was a very, very easy 5-star read for me. So that is the last book. So that was all 17 books that I read in September. Let me know if you guys have read any of them, if you share the same feelings as I do, or if not. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you guys next time.